So you want to know about rehabilitation integration. It's try and say that 10 times fast. What we're talking about today is how to incorporate rehabilitation training into your regular training so that your entire life doesn't look like a big rehab ad. We want to still make sure that you're still seeing progress in the areas that aren't injured, but you want to make sure that you're doing the right things for the areas that are injured. Let's talk more about that now.
What's up, everyone? My name's Yanni Baumeister. Across the table from me is my brother Rad. Behind the mixer is Richie. We are Unity Gym and the Unify Movement System. If you want to know how to turn driven people into athletes like we do, download our blueprints. They're available in the description of this replay on the podcast or YouTube. Otherwise, you can jump on our website, unitygym.com. How are we today, fellas?
Yeah, feeling good. You know,
Mate.
it's Friday. It's been a good week. This whole topic came from a bunch of people asking questions about rehabilitation, and I think it's been a good one.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of good comments and conversations coming through on the UMS Movement Mastermind, which reminds me, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, you've got to get yourself over to the UMS Movement Mastermind so that we can interact and connect on a much higher level. Also, really can't wait to get Richard a microphone, so when I say, "What's up, lads?" he can chime in and say, "Good," as well. It's Friday here, folks, and we're just ripping it up. We have a very exciting day today. We are about to publish, for the first time in a little while, a brand new program, and it's a program that it's near and dear to all of our hearts because all three of us have had golfer's elbow or tennis elbow or both.
In both arms.
Currently, I have tennis elbow, not from playing tennis. Funny story. I'll share it in a sec, but it's absolutely one of the worst injuries. We call it gym herpes around here because it's so hard to get rid of. And we've been meaning to add a forearm and elbow rehab program to our repertoire of rehab programs. We have hip and knee and foot and ankle and lower back programs already. And shoulder.
And anterior pelvic tilt.
And we will do a posterior pelvic tilt program because that's something I've had to work through myself. But anyway, the forearm program is about to drop. We're just putting the finishing touches on phase 1, and we're very excited about it because a lot of people have requested this.
Phase 1 is ready. It's all good.
Really?
And we've filmed. It's done.
Wow.
It's up. It's ready to go. And we've filmed phase 2 and 3. And it's just getting edited, so phase 2 and 3 will be up on Tuesday or Wednesday next week.
Oh, how good's that?
But what Yanni should be really getting at is that, of course, every week we have a flash sale, and a lot of people have been asking us rehab questions lately, so we decided to do something very different this week. We really talk about how can we add value to our community with these flash sales. And we decided for the first time ever that we were going to allow you to choose what product you want to purchase at a severely discounted rate, and we're going to be focusing on those rehab programs. So we've got all 5 rehab programs. We've got the brand new forearm and elbow rehab program, which is mainly to fix golfer's elbow and tennis elbow. Then we've
medial or lateral epicondylitis.
Yeah, or tendinopathy. So that's the first one. Then we've got the shoulder rehab program, a hugely successful program. We've got the knee rehab program. Then we've got the hip and lower back rehab program. And then we've got the anterior pelvic tilt rehab program. So there's 5 programs there, and you can choose which one you want to get at the great discount, or you can get all of them. There's a bundle to get all of them together. And these programs are life-changing. If you watch the video of me talking through why we created these programs, when you click on the site, when you have a look at the link after we go post it live after this show, those stories are real. I've personally suffered every single injury that we created these programs for. Yanni's suffered most of them as well. So we've successfully rehabbed ourselves through this, and then we've used it on many of our clients. So if that's you, if you're somebody that is dealing with an injury that you really want to fix, then this is your opportunity to do it.
Or if you're a trainer or physio, we got so many physios who buy these programs and use them with their clients and rave about them.
Yep.
And they're all they're pretty amazing. Anyway,
We're going to talk today about the concept of, not rehabbing your whole body, just focus on the area that you need to rehab. And specifically, how do you fit these programs into the UMS? How do you fit it into your regular training?
Or how do you fit any rehab into your regular training, more importantly? And this is really important. Yesterday I wrote about, to my inner circle email list, about the concept of not putting your entire body in rehab. Like this week I've talked a lot about this, a lot about the concept of, there's always something you can do. Taking time off is almost always the worst thing you can do, because what you got to understand is when you take time away from the gym, if you're used to physical exercise and lifting weights and things like that, and you take time off to try and allow an injury to repair itself, you're losing strength very quickly. After a 2-week period, you start to rapidly lose strength in the big global muscles, the big prime movers, the muscles that are involved in pushing, pulling, squatting, bending. And you do not want to do that, because what that does is it creates more vulnerability and instability around the injured area. So in most cases, with the exception of a bone fracture, it's really important that you keep moving, and you want to try and keep up with your regular training for areas that are not affected by the injury. And you also want to learn how to regress to the movements that are affected by the injury, just sufficiently that you provide enough stimulus for the body and not too much stimulus to overload the injured tissue. And it is a little bit of an art form, but once you understand the theory behind it and the principles behind it, it's really, really not that difficult. And I really mean it. It's life-changing. It doesn't matter what injury you've got. Understanding the 5 key principles to rehab theory, I think, is super, super important. And we will go. I'm gonna introduce those 5 key principles today, but I'm going to give up a little secret to the rehab programs. This is an added module, a video that is that we've shot specifically for the new program today, that we're going to include in all of the rehab programs now, because it's just so important that you understand these. And then we're going to also talk about how we've created the programs, rehab programs, to sort of slot in really nicely to our UMS training, and how you should learn from that, because this is key to constant progression or achieving a high level. If you're constantly stopping and starting because of a little niggle somewhere in your body, you're never really going to get anywhere. You're definitely not going to achieve movement mastery, which is what we're sort of coaching people for. You're not going to achieve an athletic transformation. And, I think results, if you're stopping and starting all the time, are generally pretty mediocre. So it's really, really important to understand.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's something that I don't know. I've forced myself to become really, really good at this, because if I didn't, I just wouldn't have been able to achieve what I've achieved. Like the injuries come. It's part of training. It's something that happens. Often injuries come from living a sedentary life, or even doing a certain style of training for a long time, or living a sedentary life, either way, where your body adapts to that style of training, or it adapts to the sedentary life, and then you try something new that you've never done before. And either if you've lived a sedentary life, or if your body's adapted to a certain type of training, all of a sudden you're asking your body to do something it's never done before, you get injured.
Yep.
And it's really, really common. You're not unnormal if that happened to you. You're actually very, very normal. So we need an understanding of how to deal with that, and it is so. I mean, if you've been tuning into this week's shows, we don't need to go over it again. We've talked about the concept of regression. We've talked about the concept of not creating this injury identity. So now it's all about talking about how to fit it in, to your training. So, what I guess we should talk about the first point here, which is don't rehab your whole body. Fit the rehab component you need into the workout. So let's say you've got a shoulder injury. Okay, or let's say you've got a forearm injury. We'll talk about what we're releasing today.
Because forearms are cracker because you're gripping everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Just to load a squat bar, you've got to use your forearm.
That's right. Yeah, and we've all suffered from this, so we know all about it.
Yep.
So, what happens when you've got golfer's elbow or tennis elbow or forearm tendinopathy? So there's a hell of a lot of stuff you can't do, but guess what? It doesn't affect your core at all. It doesn't affect your shoulders. The grip, when you grip to try to train certain shoulder exercises, it definitely affects, but it doesn't affect your shoulders. Your shoulders themselves can work normally. Yep. Your trunk can work normally, and your entire lower body can work normally. So if you say, oh my God, every time I grip something and I pick up the shopping, I kill my arms and I can't lift any weights or anything, well, I'm stuffed, I can't do anything. Man, you're really approaching that the wrong way. One of the easiest wins that you can have is, one of the simplest, biggest no-brainers is, okay, I'm not going to focus so much on upper body strength, I'm going to focus on mobility across my whole body. Like that's just one of the most basic ways that you can approach it.
Or lower body strength. Yep. But tendinopathy is a different beast to most other injuries, and this is this is something that if we want to go deeper, we'll get Phil on the show. He's actually doing some work with a friend of ours today. They're producing an online course, and he would say this. I know he would say this, that tendinopathy is a different beast, and it's actually really quite different to approach when you're training for it. Often the very exercises or movements or stimulus or load that cause the issue is the exact thing you need to do. So a lot of people, when they experience really bad tendinopathy, like even the smallest things like turning the key in your car can aggravate it and really hurt it. And so that turns people off. They think, okay, I've got to rest this until the pain goes away. But what tends to happen is that during that period, the tissue is remodeling even more. Tendinopathy is a breakdown of the collagens and the protein in your muscles. So it's a degeneration of the tissue quality. And if you don't get to it really quickly, immediately, if you don't train it immediately and start strengthening those tissues, then it gets worse. So rest actually makes it worse, almost as bad as overloading it again. And so you've got to find this midway point with tendinopathy where you've got to stimulate it enough that we're going to start strengthening those tissues again and get those tissues remodeling in the right way, but not too much that we cause more breakdown. And finding that point, that's where it's really important to work with someone like Phil or like a physiotherapist who understands tendinopathy to be able to help you find that midway point. But we have some methods that have worked really well for us and our clients that we'll sort of talk about in a sec, that are included in these programs. But it's really important to understand that if you experience a little bit of discomfort, that's actually okay with tendinopathy. It's actually good. It's beneficial, What's important is that you set baselines and make sure that you're not breaching those baselines after the fact, after you've gone to train. So, the concept of if you've got forearm tendinopathy or elbow tendinopathy and you need golfers or tennis elbow and you go to the gym and want to do a squat session and loading the bar, you feel it a little bit, that's okay. That's totally fine. The most important thing is that it's not hurting the next day, that you haven't made it worse. And a lot of people stuff this up. They think, I've got forearm, a really bad golfer's elbow, therefore I can't even load weights. I can't even pick up weights, so I can't train lower body. And I mean, for us, that's just ridiculous because there's so much mobility work you could be doing, or flexibility work you could be doing, or core work you could be doing, that you're leaving off the table. But let's say hypothetically you don't know how to train flexibility like we teach in the UMS, then you might think, oh well, I can't go to the gym, I'm ruled out completely. And it's frustrating. We've all been through it. I had really bad golfer's elbow for about 8 months where I just couldn't train the way I wanted to train, but that doesn't mean you can't train.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we should talk about how you incorporate,
before we do that, let's go through these 5 points. Okay. What I will do, I'll read it out, and then you can build some context around it. Okay, because Rad doesn't have the sheet in front of me. So the 5 points are issue intensity continuum, the discomfort baseline principle, the load management principle, regression principle, and progression principle. So first and foremost, issue intensity continuum. To begin your rehab, you should fully understand the correlation between your issue and the intensity that you can train at. So build some context around that, Rad. What is it? Very briefly explain the inverse relationship
we'll just
between
touch
issue
on
and
this
intensity.
because you spent a whole lot of time filming proper videos on this yesterday so that people can watch if they want to when they get these rehab programs. So we'll just touch on it. But the issue intensity continuum refers to the concept that the greater the issue that you have in your body, the lower the intensity that you can train at, and it's a direct correlation.
It's an inverse relationship.
An inverse relationship. So that means that on a scale of 0 or 1 to 10 of an issue, 1 meaning that you have no issue at all, and 10 meaning that you're probably hospitalized. 10 would be a fracture, a complete broken bone or something like that. Then on the same way, the intensity that you train at, 1 would be a walk, you're just walking along, and a 10 would be you're doing a 1 RM maximum weight lift movement or sprinting flat chat, whatever it is. They sit in opposite each other. So as the issue goes from a 1 to a 2 to a 3 to a 4, the intensity that you can train at drops down from a 10 to a 9 to an 8 to a 7. And it has to match up like that. So as the issue goes up, the intensity that you train at goes down. And this is one of the most, you go into that a lot deeper in the video, so we'll save it for that. But it's critical that you understand the issue intensity.
And it's bleedingly obvious when you see it. When you draw it up on a whiteboard and you go, well, okay, so if my injury is a 5 out of 10, I can only train to a 5 out of 10.
It's obvious, but if personal trainers like us that are professionals that had been in the industry for about 12 years, when we heard it for the first time, had a light globe moment. It seems obvious, but we didn't even understand it before Leroy told it to us about 5 years ago. So
the discomfort baseline principle, guys, is next. Load management principle is next. Training variables, including intensity, volume, complexity, and recovery, must be manipulated, suited to the damaged tissue, and compared to your post baseline exercise. So we'll talk about, obviously, I mean, this seems so obvious to us, but it's obviously not obvious because people get it wrong all the time. What does it mean to manage load appropriate to the damaged tissue?
Yeah, well, that's something that people really mess up. So if we use the example of the tendinopathy, the golfer's elbow or the tennis elbow, so you've got this issue in your forearm that causes you to, when you, let's talk a bicep curl, okay, something really simple, So you don't have any issues, so your issue is on 1, so your intensity can be at a 10, and you can pick up a 30-pound, dumbbell and do several curls with it. So that's give or take 15 kilos or 14 kilos. So that's a decent weight. And now all of a sudden you've got this tendinopathy and you're going to pick up a 10-pound dumbbell or a 5-pound or a 5 kilo, and just that weight is enough to really stimulate the tendinopathy and make you feel like, whoa, I'm working that. But your bicep is going to get 2/5 of stuff all work done. You're not going to, on that amount of weight, you're going to have to do in 80 reps or something to come even close to failure. So where people go wrong is, so tendinopathy, if we use the golfer's elbow, tennis elbow, one of the characteristics of tendinopathy is that it feels much better after you've warmed up. So when you're cold, you'll grab something and you'll be like, oh my God, that's horrible. And then you'll warm up and you'll feel, oh man, this is feeling really good now. So then you go for it in the workout. So in this example, you grab those 30-pound dumbbells and you do a set of
your bicep workout.
You really do a bicep, but you've killed your tendons. You've now made it a hell of a lot worse. So the idea of this is that in this example, you would do a workout with only 10-pound dumbbells where your biceps wouldn't even feel like they got touched. But what you've actually done is you've chosen a load that is correct for the weakest link, in this case, the tendinopathy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's lots of variables. Rad's used intensity there. You've got recovery, you've got volume, you've got the complexity of movement. You may find that the tendinopathy started by doing pull-ups, and you may find that you have to reduce the complexity of movement down to a bicep curl, and then it's sufficient, and you can train.
Yep.
You know, we talk about in the program,
or a single arm row or something.
That's
or
right,
whatever,
and then you can go even further and use muscle contraction in and of itself as the variable that you're regressing, and you can go from doing concentric and eccentric. The most damage to the tissues done in the eccentric contraction, so then you could remove the eccentric.
Yep.
And this is all
Only
stuff
do
that we cover in the
concentrics,
programs, you know.
Yep.
The next one is the discomfort baseline principle, and this is super important because we know that you can't stop exercising. But how do we figure out whether you exercise too much? And there is a little bit of trial and error, but the discomfort baseline principle is something that Phil taught us recently, which is essentially that you sort of diarize or make note of the level of discomfort. I use discomfort instead of pain because pain just brings on a different psychology. But you baseline your discomfort on a day where you don't add any extra stimulus. So you're not exercising yet, you don't start the workouts yet, and you just go through your day and you experience the level of discomfort you get when you turn your keys or the door handle. We're using this forearm tendinopathy as an example here. You do your usual activity and just really acknowledge what level of discomfort you experience there and what triggers it. You know, anything that triggers it throughout the day, you make note of. I like to diarize it. I like to write it down so you're really, really clear and succinct. Then the next day you do your first workout. And we instruct people to take yourself to a 4 out of 10 on the discomfort meter in the injured tissue. So you allow any stimulus to happen and you go for the highest and most complex stimulus you can, but only taking it to a 4 out of 10 on the discomfort. And then the following day, you compare your level of discomfort or pain to the benchmark day. And if you've gone beyond that, then you know you've trained too hard and you scale it back a little bit for your next workout. It becomes quite methodical once you understand these principles, you know.
Are we going to go through all of these? Because we're running out of time.
We only got two more.
Right.
The regression principle is your initial goal is to regress back to the appropriate stimulus, and then which Rad's explained there, and then progress to doing the exercise or movement that caused the injury as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And very quickly, the progression principle, your final step. Why don't you share the progression principle and progressing back to complex movements?
Well, yeah, you know, often with injuries, you know, we've spoken about this week about how you have to retrain the stabilizers, you have to regress your injuries, but you want to, as quickly as is safe, you want to be progressing. So you find that regression point that's right for you, and then you want to be safely but steadily, consistently and quickly progressing back to a point of complex movements and back to the point of where you want to be training at. And that's different for everyone, because for some people you might reevaluate what you were doing that got the injury, and you might think to yourself, you know what, like this has happened to me a lot. With some of my injuries, I've gone, you know what, I don't actually like that. What I was doing is high risk, and I don't think I need that anymore. I can fulfill myself with other ways. So I've sometimes never gone back to the thing that injured me, and that's up to you. But yeah, you want to get that happening as quick as possible. You want to progress.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and that really ties into what we're talking about here, which is how to fit it into a program. Because the reality is that if you've injured your shoulder, you still should be doing your squats. You probably still should be doing your deadlifts. You probably still should be doing all your core training, all of your mobility. The only thing that you will have altered will be your push-pull patterns, and potentially a couple of other things. It depends on how mobile you are in the shoulder capsule for your barbell back squats and things like that. You may not be able to achieve a low bar back squat. A lot of your Cali movements, like your hand balancing, will be off the cards for a little while. So how do we fit a shoulder rehab into like a regular training regime?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, because that's near and dear to my heart. So basically, like, we're going to use the UMS as an example, okay? Because that's what we're teaching here. So in the UMS, we have, in the foundations phase, there's 2 bent arm strength days, which are upper body strength training sessions that involve bending the elbow, so typical upper body strength training days. Then there's 2 lower body strength training days, so squats, deadlifts, things like that. And then if you're onto the progressions program, there's 2 straight arm strength training days, which are upper body days that don't bend the elbow. The exercises are just for shoulder. So what we do is, in the case of a shoulder injury, you ditch your bent arm strength workouts and you replace them with the shoulder rehab training. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So you're still training your lower body the same way. The straight arm strength days will be modified, but often you'll be able to do a lot of that stuff even with a shoulder injury. But you have to regress, and sometimes you may, what I did, because my shoulder injury was bad enough, I replaced both bent arm and both straight arm days with shoulder rehabilitation. The same thing would happen with a forearm issue. If you had a forearm and an elbow issue, you would replace what I found with the golfer's elbow and the tennis elbow. I could actually still do almost all of the straight arm strength work, because with golfer's elbow and tennis elbow, it's usually only involved in elbow flexion or extension and gripping. Yeah. But I found that I could do definitely a modified version of my straight arm strength workout, and I was totally fine. But the bent arm strength had to be completely changed.
Yeah.
So you'd literally, your whole program would look exactly the same, but you would swap the bent arm strength days for the forearm and elbow rehab program.
Yep.
Same for the knee or hip or lower back rehab. You literally swap the lower body days for those rehab programs. You just swap it out, and you still keep doing the exact same bent arm and exact same straight arm strength that you're used to.
Yep.
And if you adopt that approach, what happens is, and this would be a linear path if somebody just followed the basic path that anybody else, that we would hope people would follow. You would go through the 3 phases of the rehab programs, and then you would get to a point where you are now ready to start incorporating things, and you probably have 2 options here. At this point, when you get out of that rehab stage, you would either do the foundations program for either the lower body or the bent arm strength. You would just repeat that even if you were still on the progressions program for the other part, or you would now just incorporate the A1 and A2 movements from, so let's, in the examples of the forearm, so you've got your golfer's elbow, your tennis elbow, you've gone through the 3 phases, you're starting to feel better. So now you just include an A1 and an A2, so a low amount of volume for compound movements, the stuff that you want to do, and then all of the supplementary moves would be the rehab stuff. Yep. And then you'd include a B1 and B2 and remove some of the rehab, and then eventually you're back to your normal training.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't training in the UMS and you don't understand even what the meaning of supplementary and this sort of stuff, supplementary movements are there usually to complement your primary movements, the movements that you do first in the workout. The most important movements are always prioritized at the start of the workout, and usually we use opposing movements to keep balance.
Agonist and antagonist.
They're referred to as an agonist and an antagonist movement. And then, we usually complement those with what we call supplementary movements to get the volume that we need to elicit the response that we're looking for, either in strength or muscular hypertrophy or performance, speed and power. And all this stuff is obviously explained in more detail if you go deeper into the programs. Next week, we are going to do an entire week. We've had so many questions about how you fit all this stuff together. And, Rad, Richard and myself pride ourselves in producing a lot of great content. And off the back of all that great content, if you log in, especially if you're a UMS online coaching member and you have a dashboard that's just filled with all these different programs, there's this notion that, the best way to do this is to try and fit everything together into one ginormous circus of exercise. But that's just not the case. Yeah. These are modules that are designed to trade in and out of your routine, and you master one thing at a time.
And can I say, everything that we speak about here, every single thing, we speak from personal experience. We do not, and it's only just dawned on me, because this wasn't something, it was subconsciously our intention, but Yanni and I never looked at each other and said, this is what we're going to do. But we only speak about things on this show that we've got personal experience with. So what Yanni just said there, I was the one above any of us in this room, Richard, Yanni and me, that really tested this. I tried training in a way where I was trying to do so much at once. I tried training in a way where I was doing 3-hour training sessions, or even 1.5 hour to 2 hour training sessions a day. And I was working on handstands, I was working on locomotion and flow, I was working on general strength movement, I was working on flexibility, I was working on gymnastics rings. And we also tried doing that with our members at the gym, and the results did not show. It did not.
It produced
mediocre results. Yeah. After years of training that way, it produced mediocre results. And on the other hand, and this is why the UMS is so strong, is because we've got 3 people that have road tested it in very different ways. Yanni and Richard have always been 2 guys that have been much more focused than I have on one specific thing. And for them, it's more been around just raw strength, just producing raw strength. And what I learned the hard way, maybe not the hard way, but just what I learned, is that you have to prioritize the things that you want to get better at. And at the most basic level is strength and flexibility. Because when you're really strong, like, we were talking about this with Phil earlier on this year, it actually only takes 1/9 of the work that it took you to get there to maintain 90% of what you've got. So let's use chin-ups as an example. You can't do one single pull-up. To go from not doing one pull-up to being able to do 10 good pull-ups, it's a bit of work. And you're going to have to really, push yourself. You're going to have to manipulate volume. Probably got to train the pull-up twice a week. And to get up to that 9 or 10 pull-ups is a really big feat. But to go from that to be able to maintain, so let's say you can do 10 pull-ups at your best effort, to maintain being able to do 9 pull-ups, you need to do 1/9 of the work.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that you understand that you make a decision on what it is that you want to achieve, and you double down on that. You work at it until you get to a level where you think, okay, this is good, let's put something else in the priority list, and you'll find that with a minimal amount of work, you'll be able to maintain 90% of the flexibility that you got, 90% of the strength that you got, whatever it is. That's what we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to be talking about how do you, for those of you out there that have got the handstand masterclass and the muscle up masterclass and the foundations program and the mobility masterclass and the 18-minute, how do you put it all together?
Or people who are just looking in from the outside going, how do I construct a program that is going to guarantee that I achieve a desired result?
Yeah.
Because there's too many people out there. One of my great mentors, who we're very excited to be bringing on the podcast soon, which will be a real honor for me because I do have a bit of a professional crush on him, Tony Battaji, once said to me very, very simply, you can't ride 2 horses with one ass. And when you're training for something, you're either training for, you're prioritizing strength in a movement, you're prioritizing strength in structural balance, you're prioritizing a balance of strength and flexibility. And we had this reinforced again when we started to sort of spend some time with Daniel Vadnal from Fitness FAQs. He worked extremely hard for a whole year to get the planche, and everything else was built around that. He didn't stop doing everything else, but it becomes your priority.
Yep.
And it's in the same way that if you're trying to do a muscle up or do unlock the handstand or just generally balance your body, then that becomes your priority. And for us, then it's like start with the foundations program and then focus on the UMS program. Don't worry about all these masterclasses that are skill specific. They're going to be bolted on once you achieve that balance, that first goal, it's really, really important, and it's something I'm really excited to do a special week on next week because we're getting a lot of good questions about it, and I think that's something that people need to understand.
Oh, for sure.
Programming principles in general, yeah.
But for today and for the next 72 hours, if you have some old injuries that you want to get rid of, this is your chance to grab our hugely successful rehab programs. They're going to be going live in a matter of hours. So jump on it, grab the program that you want. First time ever that we've allowed you to choose what you want to purchase on one of our flash sales. And, let's get rid of those achy old injuries and take you to the next level.
And how exciting is launching the long-awaited golfer's elbow, tennis elbow, forearm and elbow rehab program.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy about that. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy.
We'll see you soon.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.